My billionaire boss tried to humiliate me. Then she learned how the rich really fight. I was 21 when I landed my first real job as a nanny. Not just any family, but a top 1% old money household. 12-hour shift, full run of the house. So much trust that within a few weeks they'd stop hiding the jewelry and stop bothering to turn on the security cameras when I was alone inside. One afternoon, the mother, Linda, asked if I'd help organize a party. $800, and I could attend too on one condition. Nobody could know I was the nanny. Strange, but I said yes. I was young, hopeful, and honestly a little starstruck by the idea of meeting someone rich and interesting at a party like that. The weeks leading up to it were exhausting. Flowers, glassware, umbrella colors, every detail micromanaged like a wedding. While I worked, I'd overhear Linda on the phone, bragging to friends about how effortlessly she juggled 3 kids at an elegant event. It always sounded like the other end was impressed. Annoying, but I was getting paid well, so I let it slide. In the final days before the party, though, something shifted. Linda, usually patient and soft-spoken, started snapping at me, once even throwing a water bottle when I wasn't setting the table fast enough. The kids noticed too, coming to me in tears asking why mommy was being so mean. I distracted them with games and told myself it was just party stress. The party, the night itself, was everything I'd imagined. Chandeliers, a crowd dressed in suits and gowns, me in a $300 dress feeling like a completely different person. Linda greeted me warmly enough on the surface, tension still visible underneath, and introduced me to her friends. Then, in a lull in the conversation, she struck. "You know, Lily here had her first baby over 2 years ago and still doesn't know how to change a diaper," she said, to a wave of laughter. I forced a smile. She kept going jokes about how I couldn't calm her kids without calling the nanny, about how many years she'd gone without needing to fire one. Each line was a small, precise cut, dressed up as humor, landing while everyone laughed along. So I found the kids. Nothing cruel, just a few funny faces. And within a minute, all 3 were crying at once, loud enough that the whole party noticed. "Hey Linda, I think your kids are crying," I said, loud enough to carry. "Why don't you show us what your parenting classes taught you?" She panicked, picked one up, swung him the wrong way, and made it worse. Within seconds, the entire room was watching her fail at exactly what she just mocked me for struggling with. I let her sweat for a beat before stepping in and calming them myself. Her friends erupted, asking if I could nanny for them instead, offering 2 or 3 times what Linda paid. It felt like a win. It wasn't. The retaliation. The next morning, 3 missed calls from Linda, then a text. "You're fired. Return the house key today." That afternoon, a massive flower arrangement arrived at my apartment lobby with a card. "Loved your style last night. Let's talk opportunities." Madison Montgomery, along with a phone number. Madison had been one of the most elegantly dressed women at the party. Before I could decide whether to call her, Linda made her move first, spreading word through her social circle that I'd stolen jewelry from her house. A friend working in the same circle texted me, alarmed, asking about the pendant. I called Linda immediately. She answered sickly sweet, explaining she'd already filed a police report, as required by her insurance. Panicking, I called Madison. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been expecting it. "Linda's quite predictable when her ego gets bruised," she said, and invited me to lunch the next day. I spent that night gathering everything I had, screenshots of Linda praising my work, time-stamped photos with the kids, proof of exactly what I actually did in that house. Madison's world. The restaurant the next day felt like another planet. Madison, sunglasses indoors, explained the situation plainly. Linda had already told everyone at the party I was a thief who'd manipulated her children against her. "But here's what you don't understand about our world," she said. "Linda isn't well liked. She's tolerated because her husband has connections everyone wants." Madison ran a high-end staffing agency for wealthy families and had been watching me carefully. She offered me a placement with a client family, nearly triple Linda's pay on one condition: clear my name first. She had a plan. Within days, a $1,000 an hour lawyer named Aiden, helping for the entertainment value, he admitted, drafted a cease and desist and demand for retraction. Linda caved almost instantly, sending a group email claiming the missing jewelry had turned up in her safe. The damage to my reputation, though, wasn't so easily undone, and Linda wasn't finished. The Harringtons, my new position with the Harrington family, Madison's clients, twin 4-year-olds, went beautifully for about 2 weeks. Then Mrs. Harrington showed me printed screenshots of fabricated social media posts under my name. Drug use, explicit content, racist comments, sophisticated fakes. Linda's fingerprints were all over it, though proving it was another matter. Madison connected me with DT, a former hacker running a cybersecurity firm for the ultra-wealthy, blue hair, more tattoos than bare skin, and blunt as anything. "Rich people problems require rich people solutions," she said, tracing the fake hosts back through a VPN to Linda's home network. Not enough for legal action, but enough for what came next. Madison arranged a quiet lunch with women from Linda's circle, including one married to the CEO holding the mortgage on Linda's husband's investment property. It became clear fast. These women weren't gossiping. They were systematically dismantling Linda's social standing. By the end of lunch, Linda had already lost invitations to 3 upcoming charity events, social death in their world. Meanwhile, DT's evidence convinced the Harringtons the posts were fake, and I threw myself into the job with real gratitude. 2 calm months followed: trip to their Hamptons house, their ski chalet in Vermont, a mentor in Madison, a life better than I'd ever imagined at 21. The playground. Then, at an exclusive playground one afternoon, I ran into Linda with her kid. Her face went from shock to fury in an instant. Instead of confronting me, she smiled sweetly, knelt down to the Harrington twins, and whispered something to them that made their eyes go wide before walking off. That evening, Mrs. Harrington called me into her study, visibly troubled. The twins had repeated what Linda told them, that I'd been fired for stealing, that I made her children cry on purpose. Mrs. Harrington didn't fully believe it, but the doubt had been planted, and I could feel the trust I'd built starting to crack. I called Madison in tears. Her response was immediate. "It's time to end this. Sage, and the nuclear option." Madison introduced me to Sage Donovan, a fixer in her 50s, steel gray hair, sharp eyes, careful to clarify she did nothing illegal. She simply knew everyone's secret. She'd been keeping files on Linda and her husband for years. He was quietly hiding assets ahead of a planned divorce. Linda was having an affair with her personal trainer. "Information is currency," Sage said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Use it wisely." Madison's plan was elegant. A small dinner party at her penthouse. The Harringtons, Linda and her husband, key figures from their circle, me present as Madison's assistant in a borrowed designer outfit. Over dessert, Madison steered the conversation toward loyalty and character, then calmly laid out exactly what Linda had done to me: the fake police report, the fabricated social media posts, before turning to Linda's husband. Robert, I wonder if Linda's been as dishonest with you as she has with everyone else at this table. It detonated beautifully. Enough details about the affair and the hidden asset came out that both Linda and Robert spent the rest of the night in damage control, no longer paying any attention to me at all. They left separately, Linda in tears, Robert in cold fury. Within a week, Robert filed for divorce, triggering the asset investigation Linda had been trying to avoid. The trainer's wife went public with the affair. The Harringtons, now understanding everything, apologized and gave me a generous bonus. I thought it was over. It wasn't. A text arrived from an unknown number. You have no idea who you're messing with. This isn't over. Attached, a photo of me entering my apartment building, taken that same day. Madison brought in a security expert named Nova, who found 2 hidden cameras in my apartment, professionally installed. I moved into Madison's guest apartment while Nova's team swept the place and secured it. Then things escalated further. A police officer showed up at the Harringtons' home. Linda had filed a restraining order against me, citing threatening emails supposedly from my account and blurry footage of someone, my height and build near her home. Framed again, this time with real legal stake. The Harringtons provided alibis for the times in question. DT traced the emails to a spoofing technique, proving they hadn't come from me. Then Robert himself reached out to Madison. Linda had gone further than even he could stomach, having him followed, threatening to expose financial matters to the IRS, and he suspected, responsible for the cameras in my apartment. He handed over proof Linda had hired a private investigator specializing in surveillance and digital framing, enough to get the restraining order dismissed and open the door to charges against Linda for a false police report. It still wasn't over. I came home one evening to find my apartment door ajar, furniture slashed, walls damaged, threatening messages scrawled across my bedroom wall in red paint. Police were skeptical that a woman like Linda would commit burglary herself. They didn't understand what obsession does to people who have never been told no. The gala. Madison decided it was time for what she called the nuclear option, quietly involving an informal council of old money families who decided who stayed in and who got frozen out socially. 3 days later, I attended a gala as her guest, held by an elderly couple whose family had apparently once owned half of Manhattan. Throughout the night, I watched Linda get systematically frozen out, conversations stopping when she approached, people excusing themselves the moment she joined a group. The one thing this circle won't tolerate is unpredictability, Madison whispered. They can forgive greed, affairs, even the occasional discreet criminality. Erratic, escalating behavior that might bring public scandal, that's unforgivable. The hostess, a tiny elderly woman with more quiet authority than anyone I'd ever met, addressed standards of conduct during her speech, eyes fixed on Linda the entire time. By the end of the night, Linda left the gala completely alone and completely shunned. The deepfake. I thought that was the end. 3 days later, Madison called at an unusual hour. An anonymous email had arrived with a video attachment, a disturbingly convincing deepfake showing me abusing the Harrington twins, built from real footage pulled off their own home security system. Attached, a 24-hour ultimatum. Confess publicly to fabricating everything against Linda, or the video goes to the police and the Harringtons. DT confirmed it was deepfake technology of unusually high quality, professional, expensive work. The Harringtons, shown the footage immediately rather than blindsided, were horrified less by the content and more by how their own security system had been compromised to make. Madison made one final call to someone she referred to only as an old friend, someone she needed for the kind of help we discussed after the Marseille situation. A man named Drax arrived that evening, immaculate suit, refined accent, and a hardness behind his eyes that didn't belong at any dinner party. He reviewed everything, asked pointed questions about Linda's routines, her post-separation living situation, and who had access to her account. Then he left with 4 words, "I'll handle this." I never learned exactly what that meant. By that evening, the anonymous account sent one final message. "I withdraw my threat and all future actions against you. This matter is concluded." The next day, Linda abruptly sold her house, pulled her kids from their private school, and moved, according to Madison's sources, to a small town in Oregon. Robert let the divorce proceed uncontested and told acquaintances Linda had suffered a health crisis requiring a complete lifestyle change. The wealthy community accepted the story without question and moved on to fresher gossip. No charges, no public reckoning. Linda simply vanished from that world as completely as if she'd never existed in it. What I learned, I kept working for the Harringtons, who never wavered again once they understood the truth. Madison became more than a mentor, a genuine friend, slowly introducing me to the quiet rules and power structures of a world I'd only ever glimpsed from the edges. I never saw Linda again, though every so often my analytics would show a viewer from Oregon on an old profile. What I learned about the ultra-wealthy is that their secrets aren't really different from anyone else's. Infidelity, insecurity, financial trouble, family dysfunction. Just with more zeros attached and more resources to keep it all buried. Their real fear isn't losing money. It's losing their place in the hierarchy that validates them. And they'll go to almost any length to keep from falling out of it, even if it means trying to destroy someone who accidentally saw behind the curtain. Some nights I still catch myself checking my apartment for hidden cameras, half wondering if Linda will ever decide to finish what she started. Madison always says the same thing when I bring it up. People like Linda, once they lose everything, rarely have the resources, financial, social, or otherwise, to climb back and seek real revenge. They just find smaller ponds where they can feel powerful again. I hope she's right. But after everything I've seen of how the wealthy actually fight their battles, I've learned better than to assume anything is ever truly finished until they decided it. Even now, evenings alone in my apartment feel different than they used to, too quiet, too still. Some nights I have to get up and walk just to clear my head, tracing the same few blocks near my building until the unease settles enough to let me sleep. It's a small, strange cost for having once stood too close to a world that doesn't forgive being seen clearly. A year later, Madison and I still meet for coffee most weeks, though the conversations have shifted. Less strategy, less damage control, more ordinary catching up, her latest client placements, my plans for eventually going back to school part-time. She likes to joke that I graduated from her unofficial finishing school in how the wealthy actually operate, and in a strange way, she's not wrong. I understand things now I never would have learned in any classroom. How quickly loyalty in that world can be bought. How easily reputations can be built or burned with a single dinner party conversation. How much power sits quietly behind names nobody outside their circle would ever recognize. The Harringtons and I are closer than ever. The twins are older now, sharper, and every so often one of them will ask, in that blunt way only kids manage, why I used to look so tired and scared back when. I usually tell them some version of the truth, truth that a person I used to work for got upset with me and made things difficult for a while, but it worked out. They don't need the deepfakes or the break-in or the fixer named Drac. They just need to know the adults around them handled it and that they were never in any danger. I think about Linda more than I'd like to admit. Not with anger anymore. That faded somewhere around the time I stopped checking my apartment corners for cameras every night. More with a kind of distant, uneasy curiosity. I wonder what her days look like now. Whether Oregon gave her the quiet reset Robert's cover story implied, or whether she's simply rebuilding the same patterns on a smaller stage, the way Madison always predicted. I've stopped trying to find out. Some doors are better left unopened, even when curiosity gnaws at you late at night. What stays with me most isn't the fear, or even the elaborate choreography of Madison's revenge. The lunches, the fixer, the gala, all of it staged with the precision of a chess match I barely understood while it was happening around me. It's the smaller moment, the one nobody else remembers as the turning point. Standing at that first party, watching Linda fumble to comfort her own children after mocking me in front of a room full of strangers. That was the real beginning. Not because it was cruel, though maybe it was, but because it was the first time I understood that the people who seem the most in control are often the ones most terrified of being exposed as anything less. I don't know if I'd make the same choice again, given how far things eventually spiral, but I know I'd never go back to standing quietly while someone humiliated me for sport. Topping good behavior alone would be enough to protect me. It never is. Not in that world, and honestly, not in most others either. These days, my apartment has better lock, a security system Nova personally installed, and a short list of people I trust completely. A list that, somehow, now includes a mentor who once ran in Linda's exact circles and taught me, piece by piece, exactly how to survive in it. I still glance over my shoulder sometimes on the walk home, but it's an old habit now, more reflex than fear. Whatever Linda once was to me, she's a closed chapter, one I carry carefully, but no longer carry alone. Would I tell my younger self? If I could go back to that 21-year-old girl getting into her car in a borrowed-looking $300 dress, thrilled just to be invited somewhere glamorous, I'm not sure she'd believe half of what was coming. I don't think I'd warn her away from the job. The money mattered, and so did learning, the hard way, what people with enormous resources are actually capable of when their image feels threatened. What I'd tell her instead is to trust her own read on a room faster. I remember brushing off Linda's mood swings in those final days before the party as stress, telling myself I was imagining the shift in her tone. I wasn't. Kids picked up on it before I let myself fully admit it. That instinct, the quiet, uneasy feeling that something's off long before there's proof, turned out to be right almost every single time over the following year. Whether it was a stranger's flowers showing up a little too quickly after being fired, or a doorman appearing across the street from a coffee shop 9 days into hiding. I'd also tell her that being humiliated in public doesn't actually require a public response to fix. I've thought a lot since then about whether making Linda's kids cry back at that party was the right call. It worked in the sense that it got her friends firmly on my side that night, but it also opened a door that never really closed again. A war that, in hindsight, might have burned out faster if I just quietly accused myself from that patio and let her friends notice the tension in her voice on their own. Then again, maybe not. Madison has a theory that Linda would have found another excuse to come after me eventually, that people who build entire identities around control eventually turn on anyone who witnesses even a moment of them losing. I don't know if that's true. I only know that a decade from now, I doubt I'll remember the exact sequence of who escalated what and when. I'll remember the year I learned that money doesn't just buy comfort. It buys leverage, reach, and the ability to make a problem disappear so completely that the rest of the world simply agrees to stop asking where it went. I got to keep my life. I got to keep the Harringtons and Madison and eventually something like Heath. Not everyone who crosses paths with someone like Linda gets to say the same. Like and subscribe for more videos like these. Thanks for watching.